Hey everyone, welcome to my second video on Legend of the Galactic Heroes and our third video on the series as a channel. If you're new here,
welcome to the rice fields, motherfucker!
Welcome, you've just stepped into a 110 episode long journey. As one of the commenters on my last video said, you may want to bust out the tea and brandy and prepare yourself for the ride. And if you don't get that joke yet, don't worry, you will. To everyone else, welcome back. Nice to have you guys around. Hope you enjoyed my last video and hope you enjoy this one as well. Today we're going to take a look at the second episode of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, the Battle of Astarte. With that said, let's get started. Okay, so let's start by talking about the battle itself. First of all, the animation, though somewhat sparse, is really fun to watch. There's this nice dogfight at the beginning and several zoomed out shots of battleships firing on one another scattered throughout the episode. There's also a couple of more intimate cockpit scenes. These often show the characters exchanging banter in the middle of a life or death situation and/or planning their next strategic or tactical move. To me, these scenes of war created an atmosphere that felt both epic in scale and surprisingly grounded. Despite the fact that this is a battle taking place in outer space where ships might be separated by distances that are hard for us to fathom, this conflict also feels surprisingly near. Its combatants, long-seasoned veterans of war, react in the way we might expect them to if we really put our heads to it. They react normally. In other words, they act how any human being might if they were consistently thrown into this type of situation. They nonchalantly carry out their duties, hoping for survival and pushing the possibility of death to the back of their minds. To us greenhorns, this reaction might seem absurd. If we were in their shoes, we would be freaking out.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Or so we think. And this would probably be true at first, but over time we'd probably acclimate. We'd come to see war as they have, as a normal everyday part of their existence, as nothing to trouble ourselves over any more than what we have for breakfast or what type of tea we choose to drink before going to bed. Okay, so how does the rest of this battle play out? Admiral Paeta gets injured, Yang assumes command, and then he and Reinhardt go back and forth for a bit. Reinhardt tries to go for the deciding blow by attempting to break through Yang's remaining forces. Yang, having predicted this move, maneuvers his ships around the sides of Reinhardt's fleet and then turns around to face the opposing fleet's back. Flustered and left with little choice but to circle around the Alliance fleet to avoid huge losses, Reinhardt orders his ships to push forward in a clockwise direction. One of his admirals thinks he knows better and decides to turn his ship around. This guy, am I right? Only to reinforce Reinhardt's point when he immediately gets blown up. There's also a bit of a Machiavellian moment here as Reinhardt decides to use this admiral as an example for the rest of his fleet, successfully convincing them to follow his plan, which ends up leading to the following situation. Both forces end up in a circular position, with Dusty noting that this is unlike anything he's seen before. What's interesting to me about this scene is that this formation looks like and feels like an Ouroboros, or a snake eating its own tail. Yang lightheartedly makes note of this, adding an element of absurdity to the scene, when he compares the two fleets to snakes, but then comments on how the eventual outcome of this battle would lead to both snakes ending up digested in each other's stomachs. Normally, the Ouroboros is seen as a symbol of infinity or of the eternal cyclical renewal of life, death, and rebirth. But in this case, whether intentionally planned or not, I, for one, couldn't help but think that this might be a commentary on the nature of war. It may be that war is a recurring feature of human life. Possibly, it's one that we can't get rid of, depending on who you ask, of course. But there's something incredibly futile, and I might add totally absurd, about the prospect of human lives being wasted over something as abstract as the conflict between two nations. Anyways, shortly thereafter the conflict wraps up as both Reinhardt and Yang realize that continuing this battle any further would only lead to the needless loss of human life in pursuit of a comparatively undesirable strategic outcome. Reinhardt, ever the glory whore, and I mean that in a totally endearing way, relays a message to Yang, congratulating him on the brave battle. Yang deliberately ignores the message though. He instead turns towards mourning the loss of his friend Jean-Robert Lapp and prioritizing the needs of his soldiers. It's kind of easy when seeing gigantic figures such as 150,000 or 1.5 million lives lost, especially in a fictional story where those numbers are communicated to us through the perspective of a future historical narrator, to lose sight of the value of each individual human life lost during this conflict. It's easy until we have to see what one of those losses looks like when experienced by one of the fallen soldiers' loved ones. That may be the purpose of Jessica Edwards in this episode. As Jean-Robert Lapp's fiancé and Yang Wenli's friend, we see through her eyes what it feels like to have life shattered coldly by the empty words and praises sung by another soldier through a visual intercom. We see what it looks like for a person to have to process great personal grief while striving not to individualize blame onto her friend, whose shared occupation with her fiancé led to both of them being implicated in a scenario that led to his death. Her status as his fiancé may also be an interesting callback to the ring formation in the middle of this episode. Two snakes trying to eat each other's tails, millions of futures, and one symbolic eternity digested in the stomachs of one or the other's fleets. Lost forever